We never, ever planned to have 15. 3 was a distinct possibility. 5 would have been nice.
Tommy was born, it was a real shock. He had Down syndrome, and it threw us for a loop. We weren't sure what that meant. We weren't sure what the future meant, but we knew it was different from what we'd planned. And you know, the first year, we prayed that God would heal him of Down syndrome. But we had to fight for Tommy's life. When we brought him home, and he didn't have a very good suck, and he had very low muscle tone, and he went into full cardiac arrest when he was about 6 weeks old, and we had to resuscitate him several times on the way to the hospital. And it's just, you know, when you're fighting for your child's life, it bonds you. It's like, it's okay. You know, it's like, no, his life is so precious. And it just drives it home when you see him turning gray and blue and not breathing, his heart stopped, and you don't know if he's gonna live to make it to the hospital. That God would heal Tommy of Down syndrome was like praying that he would no longer be Tommy. And we're happy with who he is. We're thrilled with who he is.
We decided our family was complete at that time. We had 4 boys and a girl. That was great. Brian went in for an elective surgery. He was just 4 years old, and he had a reaction to the anesthesia that was used. He was in a coma for 3 days, and he died. His death really shook us up. And even now, you know, 30 years later, it still brings tears to my eyes, because you're always a mother. So about 5 years down the road, I had a dream about a baby, and that baby had Down syndrome, and that baby needed a home. I knew that. I had that dream 3 nights in a row. And I figured I better pay attention to that dream.
We called the agency. They said, we've got a class starting in like 6 months. We're all filled up right now. And then they called us back like 10 minutes later and said, we just had a cancellation. Can you come tonight? It was right about the time that Ben was conceived. We adopted him when he was just a few weeks old, and it just seemed like, okay, he was meant to be our son.
When they told us about Ben, they said, he does have a heart problem. Would you still take him? And God said, will you trust me? I said, sure.
And in 7 months, they did the surgery. They found out he didn't really have a mitral valve, and they had to try and create one. It was touch and go. They kept him paralyzed for a week to see if he was going to survive. That day, we just sensed, at the 7th day, that his little spirit man just stood up and said, I'm going to make it. And 10 minutes later, the doctor came in, he said, you know, the labs are the same, everything looks the same, I don't see any changes, but I got this feeling that he's turning the corner.
When you've lost a child, you're wondering about the goodness of God. I was. Not everybody. Some people are really good Christians. They have really strong faith. Not me. No, I was not even speaking to God when Brian died. I was really ticked. This is 5 years later, but still, to believe in healing again when you've been so disappointed, yeah, we learned to trust again.
They told us he had a 5% chance of living to age 10, and he's 25, and he's doing pretty well. He surprised them all, defied the odds.
But after he got better, we just got an urge to adopt again.
The agency contacted us right around that time and said they had this little girl with Downs who was from Ethiopia. We went up to see her and just fell in love with her.
So we got our Emily, and we were so thrilled.
We thought, yep, okay, we got a buddy for Tom. Now we got another sister for Liz, so she's not the only girl. Then we heard about Daniel. And he had multiple very severe medical problems. We adopted him in the hospital, and he died 9 months after he came home. That was real tough. The loss of a second child, we knew a little bit more of what to expect, but it also brought back all the memories of Brian, and we drew in. And then we went on family vacation the next August, and we stopped on the way back to visit Emily's foster mom, and she said, there's this girl with Down syndrome. She looks like a Daulton. If we'd have just gone straight home, we never would have known about Lainey. We never would have met her. or done any of the things that she's done and how it's changed our lives. And then we met through a mutual friend of ours, a couple from Ukraine who had helped people that went over to adopt from Ukraine. And Ukraine was just starting to open up for international adoption.
They needed a lawyer. And David was an adoptions attorney. So it made sense. So he went over. He found that when he went to the government building that handles the adoptions for all of Ukraine, he looked through the scrapbooks and the grainy pictures of all the little kids that were registered to be adopted, available for adoption. And he said, where are the kids with Down syndrome? And they said, who would want them? He said, we would. Many other Americans would too. And they said, why is this? David did many trips over to Ukraine. It just showed them about these kids, about their value.
When you walk into an orphanage of 80 kids that just jump on your lap and tug at you and pull on you and call you mama and call you papa and say, will you take me home? Will you take me home? And then you tell them, and they're already dealing with rejection. And they're already dealing with the fact that they have no parents. And you tell them that there's a Father in heaven that loves them, that will never leave them or forsake them. And you share with them the Father's heart of God. It changes their lives so immensely.
So they decided at some point to really go through those steps to get these kids made available. And when that happened, David said, well, we have to go adopt a child. We have to. And so we did the home study. When I went in for the very last meeting, the worker said, you are approved for 3.
We went over to adopt Jack and Philip, who I'd known for a couple of years. And then here's this little girl we'd never met before. Anya was 2 years and 3 weeks old when we adopted her. She weighed 13 pounds. It was like bringing in about a 2 or 3 month old.
But our Anya, who was our first to come home from Ukraine, and I think the first child with Down syndrome to come from Ukraine.
We've actually had people that have adopted kids with Down syndrome from Ukraine because they met her. And one family even named their little girl after her. So she was a tremendous, and still is a tremendous ambassador. Our next 2 adoptions were both, Jack was 5 and Philip was 5 years and 8 months.
We took a trip to a mental institution, to where our kids would have gone had we not gotten them, and it was horrible. Many, many, many kids die the first year of their transfer to a mental institution in Ukraine, and it changed our lives forever. I think I cried for a half an hour at least over the conditions there, and we felt like we just cannot leave this alone. And so we started working at that orphanage. We were there about 4 years ago, and I said to the director, her name's Tatiana, has anyone ever adopted from here? So Tatiana looked at me and she said, no one's adopted from here. We're waiting for you and David. And I said, wow. And she said, there's this girl. You must take her. She needs a family. So we came home and David said, well, we have to. We have to see if we could possibly be approved for another international adoption. And we thought, no, we wouldn't be. We're too old. It's been too long. Well, we were approved. Not only for 1, we were approved for 2. So we went for Marina. And one of the times that we were visiting there was Marina sitting there looking so pretty. And then there was this little girl in back of her on an older girl's knee. I went over and I said, who is this girl? Who is this princess? And so the light was just shining on her. And I knew that that was the other girl. We started the process for her paperwork to be registered so she could be adopted. Yeah, that was our Marina Molly. Every
time we fill a bed here, that's 1 less orphans bed that's full. Yeah. There are 200 million orphans in the world. But you know what? There's 4 billion Christians. There should not be a single orphan's bed filled.
They've been in this place where they've been neglected, and they blossom in front of your eyes. And it's so wonderful. It's like such a privilege. It's such a privilege. I think everyone should have a child with Down syndrome. We have had nothing but love from these children. They really love. They remain children, and they see life very differently than we do. We would be so much poorer without them.
And the Bible talks forever about orphans. It doesn't call them the motherless, it calls them the fatherless. So the spirit of the Father's heart became real to me like I never had before.
That he's a loving, loving Father. That none of us are left alone. You know? That he is good, he is faithful.